Something is happening inside Apple, and the world is beginning to notice. For the first time in more than a decade, the company known for leading the future is suddenly being accused of falling behind it. But what if Apple is not behind? What if Apple is planning something entirely different? Siri, once a symbol of innovation, is now years behind its competition. Users call it slow, inconsistent, outdated. Meanwhile, Google, Samsung, and OpenAI are rewriting the rules of mobile intelligence. And then the news broke, something almost unthinkable. Apple, the company famous for independence, is now turning to Google to power its next generation of artificial intelligence. A custom version of Google's Gemini, running inside Apple's private servers, will soon help run Siri. A move no one believed Apple would ever make. But here's the twist. Is AI even the reason people upgrade their phones? Recent studies show that only 11% of smartphone users in the US upgrade their device because of AI features. Nearly 30% say mobile AI is not useful at all. So, if consumers don't care, why would Apple rush? From the outside, Apple Park is a monument to precision and calm, a perfect circle of glass and steel designed for seamless collaboration. But behind the pristine facade, within the teams tasked with building Apple's future, things were not quiet. They were fracturing. The pressure, both internal and external, had reached a boiling point, creating fissures in the very foundation of Apple's AI strategy. At the heart of this storm was the team responsible for Siri, the original voice assistant that had once defined the category. Now it was the symbol of a company falling behind. The team developing Siri split in two, not over minor technical disagreements, but over a fundamental philosophical chasm. On one side stood the pragmatists, the veterans who had nurtured Siri for years. They argued for an evolutionary path, to meticulously refine the existing architecture, to enhance its reliability, and to integrate it more deeply into the OS, one feature at a time. Their approach was classic Apple, cautious, deliberate, and focused on perfecting the user experience within known constraints. They saw the sudden explosion of generative AI as a wave of hype, filled with pitfalls of inaccuracy and privacy risks that were antithetical to Apple's core values. They believed a steady hand, not a radical pivot, was the key to long-term success. On the other side were the revolutionaries, a growing faction of engineers and researchers, many of whom had watched the rise of large language models, with a mixture of awe and alarm. They saw the work coming from OpenAI, Google, and others not as a passing trend, but as a paradigm shift. To them, continuing to patch the old Siri was like trying to bolt a jet engine onto a horse-drawn carriage. They argued for a complete teardown, a from-the-ground-up rebuild based on a new, generative foundation. They warned that anything less would be a catastrophic mistake, dooming Apple to a decade of playing catch-up. The hallways of Apple Park, designed for serendipitous encounters, became channels of division. Meetings grew tense, projects were delayed, caught in the crossfire of competing visions. Key engineers, frustrated by the indecision and the feeling of technological stagnation, began to quietly update their resumes. The brain drain was slow at first, then it accelerated, and as talent walked out the door, they took with them years of institutional knowledge. The version of Apple Intelligence that was once promised for 2024, the one that was supposed to be a triumphant leap forward, never truly reached users. It remained a ghost in the machine, a collection of prototypes and conflicting roadmaps. What looked like a technological delay from the outside, another case of Apple taking its time to get it right, was actually a structural collapse. The internal conflict had created a paralysis. The company that prided itself on decisive leadership and a singular vision found itself adrift in the most critical technological race of the 21st century. The leadership, including senior executives like John Giannandrea and Craig Federighi, were faced with an impossible dilemma, a choice that would define the future of the company's software ecosystem. The pressure was immense. Every quarter, investors would ask about AI. Every product launch from a competitor was a fresh wound. The temptation was to compromise, to stitch together a hybrid solution that might appease both internal factions and give the marketing team something to announce. They could release a version of Siri that was cosmetically enhanced with some generative features, a broken AI pushed out the door to meet the market's insatiable demand for new. It would have been the easy path, the path of least resistance. Or they could do the unthinkable. They could pause. They could admit internally that their current path was a dead end. They could absorb the public criticism, endure the headlines declaring them fallen behind, and take the time to rebuild from zero. It was a choice between saving face in the short term and saving the company's soul in the long term. For a company built on the mantra of "it just works," releasing something that didn't would be a cardinal sin. And so, Apple had to make a choice: release a broken AI under pressure, or pause and rebuild from zero. The decision was made not in a single dramatic meeting, but through a gradual, painful consensus. The rebuild was on. This wasn't just about writing new code. It was about redefining Apple's entire philosophy on intelligence. The new strategy would be built on a hybrid model, powerful on-device processing for speed and privacy, supplemented by private cloud servers for more complex tasks. It was a monumental undertaking, requiring new silicon, new software frameworks, and a complete re-architecture of their data centers. The abstract blueprints on the whiteboards were no longer about patching Siri. They were about creating a new, intelligent fabric woven through the entire operating system. It was a bet not on a single feature, but on a new foundation for the next decade of personal computing. In the relentless sprint of technological innovation, there is a philosophy that champions not speed, but timing. Not being first, but being right. This has been Apple's quiet doctrine for decades, a playbook written in the ink of patience and perfected through meticulous execution. It's a strategy that often leaves pundits and competitors bewildered, mistaking deliberate stillness for stagnation. But history has shown, time and again, that when Apple chooses to move, it doesn't just enter a market, it redefines it. Consider the landscape before Apple's iconic interventions. The world had MP3 players, but they were cumbersome gadgets with confusing interfaces. Then came the iPod, a device so intuitive it felt like a natural extension of the hand, seamlessly integrated with a digital store that made music accessible. The world had smartphones, but they were niche tools for business, tethered to styluses and complex menus. Then came the iPhone, which traded buttons for a canvas of glass, introducing the magic of multi-touch to the masses and birthing the app economy. The pattern is undeniable. From the tablet, which was a failed enterprise concept before the iPad made it a household item, to biometrics, where Touch ID and Face ID set the gold standard for security and convenience long after others had tried and failed. Even in audio with AirPods, Apple waited until the technology was mature enough to deliver an experience that felt, for lack of a better word, magical. They observed, they learned from the market's false starts, and then they presented a solution so elegant and integrated that it felt inevitable. In each instance, Apple wasn't the pioneer who charted the territory. They were the settler who built the enduring city. So as the world finds itself in the throes of an AI arms race, a frantic scramble to build the biggest, most powerful large language models, the question echoes through the halls of Silicon Valley. Where is Apple? While competitors showcase generative AI that can write poetry or create fantastical images from a simple prompt, Apple's own Siri has felt, to many, like a relic of a bygone era. The perception is that the company that put a supercomputer in every pocket has been caught flat-footed, left behind in the most significant technological shift since the internet itself. But to believe that is to ignore the lessons of the past. It is to misunderstand Apple's hidden strategy. The company believes the future of AI is not about launching the biggest model, but about delivering the most personal, most useful, and most trustworthy intelligence. It's not a battle of parameters in a distant data center. It's a battle for the user's confidence. For Apple, the path forward isn't a singular, monolithic AI in the cloud. It is a sophisticated, hybrid approach. A smaller, efficient model that lives directly on your device, your iPhone, your Mac, capable of understanding you and your personal context with unparalleled speed and privacy. This on-device intelligence handles the majority of tasks, ensuring your data never has to leave the palm of your hand. For more complex queries, the system is designed to seamlessly reach out to larger, server-based models running on Apple's own silicon, a concept they call private cloud compute. This isn't a generic cloud, it's a fortress, architected to ensure that even Apple cannot see your data. It is processed in a secure enclave and is never stored. This is the core of the strategy. Controlling the experience, the privacy, the integration, the trust. It's about creating an AI that doesn't just know the world, but knows world. An AI that can find a photo from that trip last summer, pull up the podcast your friend recommended in a text message, and summarize a long email thread, all without sending your life's details to a third-party server. It's about building a platform, not just a product. A platform that developers can tap into, weaving this personal intelligence into the very fabric of the apps we use every day. Apple is betting that while others are focused on building a godlike AI, the world actually wants a deeply personal, utterly reliable assistant. And just like with the MP3 player, the smartphone, and the tablet, they are willing to wait, to perfect, and to arrive not first, but definitively. In the global theater of artificial intelligence, the spotlight has been fixed on a single, dazzling performance: the race to build the biggest model. A contest measured in trillions of parameters, in exaflops of compute, in billions of dollars burned in the pursuit of digital supremacy. The narrative, repeated in headlines and boardrooms, was that the company with the largest, most powerful foundation model would inevitably win the future. To fall behind in this race was to accept obsolescence. It was a simple, compelling, and perhaps a profoundly misleading story. Because here is the truth the world is finally starting to see. Maybe the relentless pursuit of scale, this brute force approach to intelligence, is not the only path forward. Maybe companies don't need to build their own trillion-parameter models from scratch. The cost is astronomical, the environmental toll is significant, and the practical returns for the average user are beginning to plateau. Is a model with 2 trillion parameters truly twice as useful for summarizing an email or finding a photo as a model with 1 trillion? The answer, increasingly, appears to be no. The industry has been so focused on building a bigger hammer, it has forgotten to ask what nails actually need to be driven. This realization reframes the entire landscape. It suggests that the ultimate prize isn't owning the raw, untamed engine of intelligence. Maybe the true power is not in the model, but in what you build on top of it. Power lies in the thoughtful, meticulous integration of that engine into a product that people already love and trust. It's in the user experience, making AI not a destination you have to visit, but a subtle, helpful presence that anticipates your needs. It's in the deep, contextual understanding that can only come from being woven into the very fabric of the operating system, with access to your calendar, your messages, your location, your personal data, all while fiercely protecting it. This is the difference between a powerful tool and a helpful companion. A standalone chatbot, no matter how clever, is still just a tool in a box. But an intelligence that can proactively suggest a faster route to your next meeting because it saw a traffic alert and knows your schedule. That can find a specific photo of your daughter at the beach without you ever tagging it. That can draft a reply to a text in your unique voice. That is a companion. It's an intelligence that is ambient, personal, and most critically, private. This is the art of the last mile. It's not about the raw capability of the AI in a vacuum. It's about its utility and elegance in the palm of your hand. And if that is the future, if the next decade is defined not by who has the biggest model, but by who delivers the most seamless, private, and truly personal AI experience, then Apple's move is not weakness. It is not a sign of being left behind. It is the quiet confidence of a company playing a different game on a longer timeline. It's efficiency, a deliberate choice to avoid the colossal, perhaps unnecessary expense of building a do-everything model, and instead focusing resources on what truly matters, the user-facing product. It's a pragmatic allocation of capital, talent, and energy toward the final polished experience. It's strategy, a recognition that by partnering for the heavy lifting of broad world knowledge, they can dedicate their own world-class engineering to the areas where they have an unassailable advantage: hardware integration, software design, and the privacy architecture that underpins their entire ecosystem. It's a classic Apple playbook, updated for the age of AI. Let others fight for commodity dominance, while you perfect the premium experience. And above all, it's long-term thinking. It's a bet that as AI becomes commoditized, the real, enduring value will migrate up the stack, away from the raw processing and toward the trusted, integrated interface. It's a vision where the best AI is the one you don't even notice, the one that simply makes your life better, safer, and easier. In a world sprinting to build a bigger brain, Apple is patiently crafting a more thoughtful one. So what happens next? Will Apple redefine AI inside the smartphone, or remain dependent on Google? One thing is certain: this battle is no longer about hardware, no longer about software. It's about who controls the AI that controls your life. So tell me, is Apple falling behind, or quietly preparing the next technological revolution?